Welcome to BrushBuck Wildlife Tour's Great Sandhill Crane Migration Tour. I'm Adam Lackner and I'll be presenting this webinar today. So I would like to take a minute just to welcome everybody who's attending this webinar and who may be watching this video to find out more about this tour, maybe for possible future travel. So let's start out by going over our guides who guide this tour. We'll start out with Daniel Bradford. Daniel is originally from Colorado Springs, and that is where he became hooked on the mountains. He's always loved the outdoors, and it drove him to pursue a degree in wildlife biology and management from the University of Wyoming. After visiting Yellowstone and Grand Teton with his family, he knew that's where he wanted to be. Getting the opportunity to hike and explore Jackson Hole is a dream come true. Daniel is grateful for the opportunity to help people see wildlife while also being a member of the Wyoming National Guard. Our next guide is Adam Brubaker. Adam is a photographer and has guided in the Yellowstone region and other areas of the Rocky Mountain West for about the last 5 years. He comes from a photography background, so therefore he's been a real asset to his customers to help them with photography and shooting different angles with different light on different settings of his camera. Now, this is Adam's 4th year guiding the Great Sandhill Crane Migration Trip, and as an avid birder from the Idaho Falls area who started an Audubon chapter in the Idaho Falls area, he's definitely tuned into this trip. Next up is me, Adam Lackner. I started guiding back in 2006 when we started BrushBuck Wildlife Tours, and I've guided in the backcountry of Alaska, several destinations in Africa to include Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, Botswana, and then I guide a lot in Yellowstone National Park area and the Grand Teton National Park area. I've pretty much dedicated all of my adult life post Marine Corps to guiding, and I currently build and train up our guide team every year, which is a real privilege. So this is one of my favorite trips. So I'm excited to talk about this with everybody, and hopefully you guys enjoy the cranes and the remote Schweitzer Ranch as much as we do as guides. So taking a look at the map here, we're looking at the tour route. We're going to start in Omaha, Nebraska. And we will stay in Nebraska for the entirety of this trip. And you got to ask yourself the question of, why do people want to come here to see this? And the reason why people want to come here to see this is there's 500,000 sandhill cranes that bottleneck right in the about a 30-mile stretch. And so as they migrate from their winter grounds down in New Mexico and Arizona and Texas, they're migrating up to as far as Russia. And some of them will spend their summer in Alaska and Canada, and some of them make it just to the Rockies. So to see that many birds, to see that many of anything coming through like that in a migration is fairly rare these days. And there's only a few migrations left that you can see those kinds of numbers. Now, that would be the caribou herd up in Canada and Alaska. And then you also have the Great Migration that happens in the Serengeti, Tanzania, up to Masai Mara, Kenya. And then after that, you really have to search for migrations that are still intact. And that's why this one's very special, because you don't have these migrations that you find really anywhere, hardly even on Earth now. So for this to be right under our nose, I mean, I think it's about a 10-hour drive to Chicago. I mean, it's right in the middle of the country. It's very special, and all of our guides look forward to it every year because it's an annual event that is very much appreciated every time you go. Now the cranes, they're definitely the stars of the show, and that's what a lot of people want to come see. But we definitely have the prairie chickens at the Schweitzer Ranch, and they're a big part of the show as well. You couldn't tell them that they're not the main show. So look at this guy here. He's definitely putting up his best feathers for all the ladies. Now, these are the prairie chickens, and so we go out to one of the leks and see the prairie chickens, and I'll go over that a little bit later. But yeah, going through the Schweitzer Ranch and seeing the Sandhills that are the Sandhills of Nebraska, wide open country, and seeing the Schweitzer Ranch with Bruce Schweitzer and his family, that's definitely a highlight of the trip as well. And some people actually say they like the ranch better than going to see the cranes. The other star of the show is the sharp-tailed grouse. Now, the sharp-tailed grouse, we go out and we see them on their leks as well. And so the sharp-tails put on a slightly different show than the prairie chickens, and it's definitely worth seeing. So that's pretty much the main stars of the show are the sandhill cranes, the prairie chickens, the sharp-tailed grouse. And then we have some other wildlife, and I'll be going over that a little bit later. Okay, so now that we have the main stars introduced, let's move forward to how the tour rolls out and what's to be expected with the hotels and other things. So what we'll do here is we will pick everybody up at the airport when they fly in, or we will pick them up at hotels. A lot of our customers, they fly in and stay at these hotels, and so we suggest staying at the Hilton. Most people know what the Hilton's like. You can also stay at the Courtyard. There's no shortage of hotels in Omaha, so you can stay at any one of these hotels, and then we pick you up the next day at this hotel, and then head out for the ranch. Now, we like to suggest Hotel Deco. Deco has had, we've had several customers stay there, and they really enjoyed it. It kind of has a local feel, and so it has it's a downtown location that you can go to several restaurants, and so this is one that we've had several customers be very happy with. Now, once we get everybody gathered up in the morning, the first day, we will head straight for the Schweitzer Ranch. So as we're headed to the Schweitzer Ranch, we may stop at some river overlooks to get some pictures. So the Platte River will be passing over it, and it's just there's a lot of beautiful overlooks along the way, and it's about a 3.5 hour drive to the ranch. And so once we get to the ranch, we will meet up with the Schweitzers and their hosts. They have a couple of staff there that help out with everything, and there's Bruce Schweitzer. You can see Bruce. He's lived on the ranch pretty much all his life, and has a very interesting story. He goes out and milks his cow usually once a day. He rides horses to round up his cattle. Here's a couple cattle here. Now, what's interesting about the Schweitzer Ranch is that it is sponsored by the World Wildlife Fund, and it's a conservation ranch. And basically what that means is the conservation ranch will protect the land and keep it as a working cattle ranch, and then it umbrellas native species. And what I mean by umbrella is they protect the prairie from development and by grazing it and by using it without overusing it. It's a sustainable use model. And so they graze the cattle on it, they use it, but don't overuse it because they want to use it for the long-term future for grazing. And therefore, the prairie chickens and sharp-tailed grouse, they get to keep their home. It doesn't turn into a suburb area. And so the World Wildlife Fund has taken an approach to partner with these locals and help them develop tourism and sustainable practices to help the local wildlife. So coming into the ranch, we will get checked into the Gracie Creek cabin, and this, as you can see, it overlooks the water, which makes for a good setting for birding while we're on our downtime. So there's several species of birds to get on the water here, such as redheads. You can have canvasbacks, pintails, just a lot of waterfowl. Even American pelicans and cormorants can be seen here. So let's go ahead and move on to the rooms. There are 5 rooms in this house, so everybody will have their own room. You can see here the beds are nice and comfortable and well taken care of. Now, this is walking distance to the Schweitzer cabins and where we often have dinner as well. Sometimes we cook in the house. It just depends on what the dinner situation is at the Schweitzer Ranch. So we'll go for short walks as well around the area, as you can see here. We are overlooking Calamus Lake, which makes short walks from the house really easy to get out, stretch the legs, do some birding, see the local sights around the ranch. Now, depending on how many guests we have on the trip, we will also stay at the Schweitzer lodging at the Calamus Outfitters Lodge, and that is comparable to the Gracie Creek cabin as well. So it just depends on how many people we have, but the lodging is great at the Schweitzer cabins, and it is walking distance to each other, so it's relatively the same. All right, so day 2, the prairie chicken viewing, ranch jeep tour, and the evening birding at Calamus Lake. This is a great day. It's a lot of fun. You kind of get set in, ready to go. So here we start off with some coffee and a little bit of snacks at the Calamus Lodge. And then we go ahead and load up on the buses. And it's about a 10-minute drive to the blinds. And they have a couple blinds, one for prairie chickens and a couple for sharp-tailed grouse. And so there's the blind there. It's just an old bus parked out in the field. And here are people in the blind. So you get in at dark and you wait for the sun to come up, and then the birds sometimes are already on the blind. And so you got to, quiet while you're in there, be spooking birds that are close to the blinds. Okay, so these are, and there obviously some females there present. You can see that they are posturing too. Now they have their piney feathers up. You can see those feathers up near their head, and then they're obviously fighting with each other. So they're in full strut here. Now the main bird is the one that controls the middle of the lek and will do 90% of the breeding. So this is a big deal for them. They're putting themselves at risk. We'll have us come in. We'll have northern harriers come in and try to take them while they're on these leks. And so these are just the local birds in the area, and they come every year to the same place. In high population years, there'll be sub-leks and a few birds on different leks close to these main leks. So that's the birds competing there. Now walk back the bus. We will head back to the ranch, which is a short drive, and we will go on a jeep tour. Now the jeep tour is a lot of fun because the jeep tour, we go out and Sarah, she'll explain all kinds of grasses, plants that are in the region and how they're utilizing fire to keep native grasses growing. So they want to burn these cedar trees before the cedar trees get above, I believe it's 3 foot. And if they burn them before that, then it keeps it in grassland.
I call it soapweed, even though it's a small yucca, because the Pawnee Indians that used to live here, they would utilize this in a lot of different ways. One way they would use it is they dig up the roots, and if you mix that with some water, it gets a really nice sudsy lather, and you can use it for soap and shampoo. So it's really useful that way. But you can also eat the roots. They're pretty starchy, but you could basically use them like a potato.
Okay, so once we're done with the jeep tour, we'll have lunch below Gracie Creek, below the beautiful big trees as you can see here. And Calamus Outfitters will have a nice presentation for us. And then we will come back and rest at the cabin and head out in the afternoon for some afternoon birding. And that's pretty much day 2 in a nutshell. So day 3, we have sharp-tailed grouse viewing, tour from the Schweitzer Ranch to Kearney, and evening crane viewing. So busy day. So here's the sharp-tailed grouse. The difference between them and the prairie chickens is they don't have the piney feathers. So they have a real sharp pointy tail that you can see here. And then they have more of a purple air sacs and yellowish eye comb rather than orange. Here's the sound of them, and they can be very intense. And if you notice, their wings are in a different position, kind of out more, and they're really a privilege to watch. Now this is a hybrid. You can see he has piney feathers, and he's been there for the last couple of years, getting pretty aggressive with the other resident pure sharp-tailed grouse. So these birds are pretty intense, pretty watching the sun come up. We can see other things like coyotes, sometimes some mule deer come out, and we might even see an owl come into this lek. You usually don't see them on the other leks, but this one you do. And then once we're done with that, we'll come back and we will pack our luggage. And as you can see by the map here, we will be headed to Kearney for crane viewing. Okay, so as we head south from Calamus Lodge to Kearney, as you can see on the map there, we will check into the Holiday Inn. And the reason why we choose the Holiday Inn is the Crane Festival is there, the annual Audubon Crane Festival, and so we can communicate with other fellow travelers and enjoy some of the crane presentations. And then of course there's amenities. You can see here is the pool coming up and hot tub, and of course there's a nice gym, and then eating on site is easy as well. So there are several restaurants close, but here we just have people come down and charge to the room, and then that way their meals are covered that way. And so that is at Sozo. So once we've settled into the Holiday Inn, we will gather up back in the lobby once everybody's had a break from the early mornings of going to see the prairie chickens and the sharp-tailed grouse at the ranch. We will head out in the evening for some evening crane viewing, and what we'll see is these cranes like to stage out in the fields before they come to roost on the Platte River. And so our first point where we're going to go watch the birds, we'll expect quite a few flybys in the sunset, which is pretty cool. And so to see those flybys of thousands of birds coming into roost is really special. And so this is what the flybys look like, and of course this is what they look like on the river. Day 4, morning Sandhill crane blinds at Rose Sanctuary, the Archway Museum tour, and evening Sandhill cranes at Rose Sanctuary. So this is what everyone has come for, is to see the cranes lift off and to see the cranes come in and roost on the Platte River. Now, at any one time, Rose Sanctuary can have over 50,000 birds coming into roost, and what they like are these sandbars. So where the water's not too deep, but enough water there for security from predation. Remember, cranes, they can't roost in trees, so if you see a crane in a tree, it's not a crane, it's most likely a blue heron. So the day we start out early, we will get up early and head to Rose Sanctuary, and these are red lens lights to keep from disturbing the cranes. So you want to cover up your camera as well. They don't want any flashes happening. Now this isn't from inside the blind here. That's what it looks like inside a Rose Sanctuary. And so when you walk out, it's in the dark, but when you come back, this is a liftoff, and this is what you're hoping for. So just take a minute to listen to this, because it's incredible. It's something you won't experience anywhere else, is just that sound.
Awesome. A 12.
12. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Absolutely an experience everybody should enjoy. I think that I'm so lucky to be here because it was actually a spiritual experience as much as a nature watching thing. I love it.
I think I got it pretty good.
It sounds like a waterfall.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Because I think you hear their wings too. You know, it's not just it's the incredible combination of
It's the air moving.
yeah, air moving and the calls and my heart thumping.
The noise was incredible. The sights were beautiful. The sunrise. You just can't even imagine. You've got to come here to experience it.
It was awesome. And I couldn't tell you which was better.
Good.
Most exciting was when the bald eagle came down the river and everybody lifted up in the morning. It was great. Very unusual experience, very different experience.
Very cool.
I hope you enjoyed those interviews and the crane video. Now, we hope to see you guys out on this tour. This is day 5 finishing up, Kearney to Omaha. We say our goodbyes, and then we hope to have you out on another tour. Thank you for listening. This is Adam Lackner signing off, and please stay tuned for Common Questions. Those are going to play right now.